Namaste, this is Ananta Ripa Ajmera, and welcome back to the True to Yourself podcast, a place where we explore the power of authentic living. Today I want to talk to you about a really, really important subject, which is having healthy boundaries as an empath. Having healthy boundaries is one of the hardest things for empathetic souls to successfully manage. We tend to put the needs of other people ahead of our own to the point where oftentimes we don't even feel like it's okay to have any needs of our own. I definitely can raise my hand from experience in saying that I definitely have been through this very many times in my life until I really understood what boundaries actually are. A boundary is owning your reality. A boundary is protecting your reality and actually celebrating even what your reality is, even in the face of other people trying to deny your reality. A lot of times when empaths are not in a healthy mode of operation, they easily get into codependency. Codependency is when we really rely on other people to tell us that we are good enough, that we're worthy enough, that we are lovable as we are. When we have codependency issues, we have a constant need for seeking approval through caretaking, rescuing, and really being there for other people to the point where we'll even abandon all of our own hobbies and interests to spend time with the other person in the hopes of having our emotional needs taken care of. With codependency, there's a lot of fear of losing the other to the point that we then lose ourselves in the process. There can be a really strong fear of abandonment in codependency that causes codependent people to actually just abandon their own self in the process. Therefore, I truly and firmly believe that the only real solution to this pervasive issue of codependency is to awaken spiritually to the truth of who you really are as a soul. I really don't believe there's any other answer to this issue than a spiritual journey leading to discovery of your true self. When we awaken from the spell of being other-centered, approval-centered, and really thinking more in terms of what others' needs are and even digesting other people's emotions and feeling other people's emotions without even being connected to our own, we have a real issue on our hands. This codependency can feel very spiritual because we are all about service. We're all about helping other people. We're all about rescuing and taking care of others and being so martyr-like by not putting ourselves in the equation and not even considering what we feel or how we are experiencing anything in a given moment. The danger of this issue is that we don't recognize how our seemingly selfless behavior is actually impeding our spiritual progress. We get so into caring for the other person that we get a reprieve from facing ourselves and our own pain. It's a very intelligent coping mechanism for avoiding feeling our intense feelings. And I know this from experience because I had really done this pattern so many times with so many different people. And it wasn't until things got so, let's say, out of proportion in terms of my reality getting denied to me that I had to really say no more. Now this has to stop. I need to own my reality. In the moment when I did that, I didn't know what it would mean in terms of uncovering all that reality had underneath it, but it was literally the most important thing I think I've ever done to really be true to my own self. When I was behaving in a much more codependent way, it was such a great feeling that, wow, I'm such a great person because I do all this for others and I don't think about myself. I really thought that it was so noble simply to not think about myself. On the one hand, it is true that is very noble, and that is a very important part of the spiritual quest, to not get so into our own selfish desires. On the other hand, this really can get taken to such an extreme that we then lose touch with our own reality. We lose touch with our own needs, and we can't even feel our own feelings anymore. It's as if we are simply living for other people, and we are completely disconnected from our own soul and our own mission and purpose for being on this earth. That is the real danger of codependency, and really the only solution is to boldly commit to really receiving true spiritual knowledge, embodying that knowledge, constantly listening to it and getting reminders of it, and acting in a way that is aligned with our own self-defined values. I also came to a realization on my spiritual journey that actually I cannot truly care for other people or truly love other people until and unless I can truly care for and truly love my own self. That is why Mahatma Gandhi's statement that we must be the change we wish to see in the world is so important. Only until and unless we can unlock ourselves from the prison of our own self-denial and of our own self-ignorance of who we really are, that we can actually transcend these barriers which prevent us from really embodying our full potential in life. To be truly selfless, we must always take care of our own needs. If we don't take care of our own needs, even if we have maybe built up over years of self-neglect lots of needs, then we're going to become needy. And then it just defeats the whole purpose of striving to live a life of genuine service that will be sustainable. That was the harsh realization of really understanding and taking ownership for my own codependent patterns in the past. I also recognized how there is actually some self-centered interest involved in this kind of excessive, obsessive caretaking for others. Somewhere underneath my very noble martyr-like behaviors, there was this desire for emotional security and for being validated as a worthy person by those who I gave to and sacrificed for. As it is said in every religion and spiritual path, desire itself is the demon in the mind. When I really recognized that there was indeed a desire underlying these martyr-like rescuing behaviors that I had, it made me understand how important it is to let go of the desire and then to let go of the pattern. First, I had to recognize the pattern. Then I had to dig deep into it to find out what is driving that pattern. And from there, I had to keep continually exposing myself to knowledge to fortify my understanding of what is real and true and what is just fake and temporary and transient. I had to really detach from the outer approval and strokes of other people who I admired and respected and start to really look within and begin to self-validate my own self based on how much I was living in alignment with my own self-defined set of values. I had to really look at it that if my mission truly is to empower other people and other living beings with radiant health and spiritual empowerment, then how am I, by behaving in these codependent relationships and patterns, allowing myself really to be disempowered? Once I realized how I had played a part in this codependency dynamic, then the only answer was to attach myself, instead of to the approval of other people, to a higher ideal and to higher knowledge, and ultimately to my own self. That is really where I had the training to be true to my own self. I had to go through this extreme giving away of my power to be able to then be faced with the choice to either completely be a martyr or to wake up and realize that I was being a martyr with hidden agendas that even I consciously was not aware of and needed to shine a light on in order to free myself from. It wasn't enough just to know it, though. Whenever we are realizing that we have someone or something or some situation that is not healthy for us, that is not serving us, and that is not even good for us at all, we can't just let go of it. In the spiritual understanding and the spiritual teachings of the Vedas, we learn that we have to actually take up a higher ideal and a higher mission to be able to help us naturally transcend the lower vibration, situation, person, exchange, or whatever. Because we can't let go of anything as human beings. We have this underlying problem of attachment. Swami Parthasarthi always says that attachment is the human virus. It is even more pervasive than the coronavirus. Attachment is what keeps us in bondage. Attachment is a manifestation of desires. Desires arise when we feel empty and we feel that we must look to the world for fulfillment. We must look to other people and outside situations and events for our own sense of worthiness and for our own sense of peace and happiness and joy. It's only when we feel we're lacking something that we then start to look outside to fill that void. And that, the Vedas tell us, is our fundamental ignorance of who we are as a spiritual being. When we truly know our own higher self, automatically all desires or cravings for people, for foods, for approval, for validation, for money, for God knows what else we are after, consciously or subconsciously, we can actually be free. It's only when we see through all of this that we then have a veil start to lift, and we start to realize that in fact the world cannot bring us happiness. The only person who can bring us happiness is our own self. It is very difficult to find happiness within our own selves, says Arthur Schopenhauer. However, it is impossible to find happiness anywhere else. Like it or not, we are always holding the key to our own happiness. And it is we who need to unlock that happiness from within ourselves. The way to manifest our own joy, our own fulfillment, our own security is by continuously and constantly seeking knowledge of the self, and then also practicing those practices that bring us closer to a connection with our own self. There are a lot of rituals involved in the Vedic spiritual tradition and in many spiritual traditions around the world. Rituals are really rich invitations and opportunities to convert everyday, mundane existence into something sacred and sublime. Rituals are a way to cross the bridge from our forgetfulness of our true self to a continual remembrance of who we really are. Only when we really remember that we ourselves are a repository of Sat, truth, Chit, consciousness, and Ananda, bliss that has no opposite of sorrow, can we really be fulfilled from within and stop chasing. It is only when we pursue this knowledge really diligently and really steadfastly and really consistently that we can actually experience a transformation in our personality and have the strength and the insight to even see our own patterns. When we start to even see our own patterns, that's already a huge leap out of being fused with the pattern. When we see our situations, we also get very much empowered by the practice of setting boundaries with other people in our lives who would like to deny us our reality. This happens quite a lot in codependency, with narcissism, and to people with naturally empathetic personalities. Narcissistic people, domineering personalities, tend to look for and prey on people with naturally empathetic qualities. They will take advantage of them endlessly. And it's only until an empath really bravely and boldly owns their reality in the present moment that the pattern of codependency can really be transformed. When I was going through the situation of codependency in a very extreme sense, I had experienced the greatest transformation when I simply owned my reality. I owned the fact that I had disowned my own needs and my own feelings and had given greater priority to the outside than I had to my own self. In that very owning and that very recognition and expression of what I unconsciously had done to my own self, I gave myself the permission to use my own key to unlock my own peace by committing to all those practices I already had learned that would lead me back to me. By owning my reality, that I needed to start to honor my own needs and take care of my own issues, was really able to expedite my own spiritual journey. The progress that I experienced in letting go of all kinds of hidden desires and visible issues that I had was sped up tremendously simply by owning my reality in that moment of what I needed to do. I hadn't even done it as such, but just by saying that I am going to honor myself and my needs and give myself a break from this situation, I basically unlocked a whole new world of possibilities that unfolded over a relatively quick period of time. And when I look back on it, it was really just being willing to own exactly where I was at that time. And yes, my reality was very hotly protested, and it was definitely a very frightening situation. But that's where knowledge of the self and all of the time and energy and attention I had put to studying that and embodying that and practicing that really empowered me in the face of tremendous fear and violence to actually stay strong in the remembrance of my true self that goes beyond my body, beyond my mind, and beyond my intellect. When we really own our reality, it helps us to overcome the deepest and greatest fear. When I owned my reality, I faced the fear of loss of the person who I had been most attached to. I had also overcome the fear of being without this person. And I ultimately chose my own well-being and my aligning myself with the higher mission of empowering radiant health and spiritual freedom for all beings by choosing to honor my own body, mind, and soul as a vessel for that mission. It was only in doing that that I could actually emotionally and spiritually and physically let go of this very heavy-duty attachment that probably, definitely, I had had over the course of many lifetimes. It was definitely the hardest situation I've ever faced, but it was the most important and the most freeing and the most powerful experience I have had to really initiate my journey of being a spiritual warrior. And it all began by simply owning my reality in the face of it being denied and also in the face of great danger. That is, again, why we have to practice spiritual practices. We don't know the situations our life is going to bring us, but we want to always be prepared for the worst case scenario, For someone who was a real martyr like empath, it was very frightening for the person I had sacrificed so much for to then become dangerously hostile towards me. It was, of course, the last thing I had ever wanted. And yet that is exactly what I got confronted with. I got tested by it. But in those dark, difficult moments, we have an opportunity to really choose the light over the darkness. We can consciously choose truth over the lies. And when we can really own our own reality and our own experience in the face of the denial of people we truly look up to and respect and admire, we have an opportunity to really forever free ourselves from those prisons of our own psychological patterns that got programmed into us when we were often very young. That is why boundaries are so necessary, but we have to change how we look at them. A lot of times, and I myself included, we feel that boundaries, wow, they're so harsh. It's like having a thorned gate, and nobody can come in, and we're just going to hide behind it out of fear. But it's not really like that. Boundaries don't have to be a harsh thing. They don't have to be full of thorns. Boundaries actually can be quite fragrant. They can be quite beautiful. They can even be floral and smell good. Our boundaries can be expressed in a way that we are simply focusing on owning our own experience, our own feelings, if we feel them, and our own state of consciousness and our own sense of what we need to do to progress on our own journeys. It is a really brave thing to do, but when I really understood boundaries in this way of owning my reality, then it no longer felt so aggressive and hostile to me to do. I, as an empath, always felt like, gosh, boundaries, it's so harsh. Do we really have to do that? But yeah, we do. And we can do it in a loving way. We can do it in a compassionate way. We can do it in a way that really honors the feelings and needs of the other person and acknowledges them, and at the same time is owning our own needs and feelings and situation in the present moment. And when we do that, we can choose our words really consciously. We can actually speak words that will unite us as souls and spiritually with the person even who's denying our reality, even as we are perhaps separating from that person. We can do this separation, whether that's a physical separation, an emotional separation, or just a psychological separation from a space of true compassion that only comes when we feel empathy towards our own self as well. For empaths who are so outward and constantly thinking of the other, when we start to extend that gift of empathy then towards our own self, and maybe even see our own self through the eyes of being another person, can we really heal that void of the codependency? We have to actually really boldly and bravely learn to extend the same care and consideration that we give to all others to our own self. And we want to ideally to feel good about it as empathetic souls, do it in a way that is compassionate, that is kind, but that is also at the same time firm. When we assert our reality, when we own our reality and we honor our needs and we prioritize our well-being, we can create win-win situations. We can come up with creative solutions, and we can actually, in the process, even honor the true self of the other who we are needing some kind of distance or space from. In that sense, boundaries themselves can be the most compassionate gift that we extend to ourselves and to the other. Rather than continuing to sacrifice and martyr ourselves endlessly while feeling somewhere very resentful inside that we give to other people, but we are neglecting ourselves because we always know when we're doing that, we can actually do the opposite. We can actually take care of ourselves and not resent the other anymore. And that will actually restore the health back to the relationship and make it possible that we can still have some kind of connection, but coming from a place of feeling our own fullness, which comes from spirituality, both receiving it through listening and practicing it and embodying it, and then returning back feeling truly whole and being able to even more greatly empathize with whatever the other is going through, because we would have gone on a whole journey ourselves from being needy of something from the other to truly feeling empowered from within, and that we can actually be there for our own selves. We feel then that we can actually be the provider of our own love and approval, and that in fact, we don't need anyone else. And when I realized that, wow, the health and happiness of all relationships dramatically improved and increased. And it was just as if a miracle had happened. All the resentments were washed clean. And then all it was living in the light of the self and extending a lot of respect and space and consideration towards another person's journey, then seeing what it would take for them to also move from that space of needing, right, to exploit, right, and take advantage of people, to then actually independently meeting their own needs. People who exploit, people who are narcissists, they are so unaware of their own real power, and so they project a kind of persona of power and grandiosity that makes them feel that they're invulnerable to other people's criticisms and insults and injuries. They are so far from the self, and they're so dependent upon other people. And we, in taking responsibility for meeting our needs independently, are really expediting our spiritual journey, which is all about sovereignty. Freedom, sovereignty, independence are first and foremost emotional. We first have to feel psychologically free, and then only can we be free in any other way. It's not about being free from a person or a situation or an event. It's actually about being free from the prison of our likes and dislikes, and from our mental attachments and aversions. When we really fearlessly own our true state and our reality in the moment, we give ourselves the possibility of showing other people through our example how they also can free themselves. That is why in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that simply studying spirituality and the nature of the self is the greatest sacrifice, because the closer we become to our own self, the more we can actually show, inspire, lead, and guide other people to unlock and uncover the true self within their own selves. And this is the highest purpose for which we take a human birth. It's not about donating materials, our time, our emotional support, or our thoughts. These are all good things. They're all noble things. But truly, Bhagavad Gita teaches us that the highest sacrifice we can make is to sacrifice our own ignorance of who we truly are through gaining the knowledge of the true self. And the more we do that, the more we will be able to continue to own our reality and express it in a loving way, and express it in a way that is considerate of other people, but that is very firm, and that is not going to be pushed or swayed by what other people feel or think or say or do. And that really is the key to unlock your deepest freedom. That is your birthright. I am so happy to share with you about all these topics on this podcast that I feel I have personally really benefited from. And I really love hearing from you about your experiences and your insights and even your questions that come up after you hear these episodes. You're welcome to write to me. You can reach out to me even on Instagram at ananta.1 or at True to Yourself Podcast with any questions that you have or any requests for further clarifications or any other topics you might like me to address on here. I really feel that this podcast is a wonderful platform to be of service and to share the truth that sets us all free in a way that can be understood by the needs of modern seekers in the modern day century that we live in. So feel free to reach out on Instagram. You can also feel free to check out my organization, The Ancient Way. We're in a very deep visioning and planning phase of the organization right now. So we have a lot of really wonderful things coming up in 2022. We have 3 programs that you can possibly join to be a part of our wonderful community of seekers from all around the world. We have a Wellness Ambassador program that will continue on next year. In addition to that, we have another program that will really step-by-step support you in being true to yourself and really starting to own your reality and own it in the face of even your greatest fear. It is going to be a super empowering program and experience to really help you become your own hero. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the mind itself can be your best friend or your worst enemy. Therefore, we all have that opportunity to train our mind through practice and through exercises for body, mind, and soul to align our mind with the highest mind and the highest consciousness to then be our own hero, friend, rescuer, and protector. It's so important, and it's going to be such an incredible journey full of new narratives that we can write for ourselves that are rooted in spiritual knowledge and that are rooted in understanding and taking responsibility at a deep level for the karma that brings us all types of adversity in our lives to ultimately be tests for us of our knowledge and our ability to transcend the struggles that we are presented. So feel free to subscribe to the website to be amongst the first to know about our announcements. We'll also be updating the website in the weeks to come, so you can just stay informed that way by visiting theancientway.co. And I will really look forward to welcoming you to benefit from the ancient way in whatever way you feel called towards it. Thank you so much again for joining me. This is the True to Yourself podcast, a place where we fearlessly own our reality and explore from there the power of authentic living. Thank you again, and namaste.